1 win in 7. That is the current record Arsenal Football Club are on. That is utterly shocking for a club of their stature and a club of their expectations. So, Harv, are Arsenal currently in a crisis, or are they just going through a bit of a sticky patch?
I mean, it's tough to tell at the moment with Arsenal because the way they're performing is not great at all. You know, 3rd, 4th, that's just not good enough. At the end of the day, you've got to be competing in that top 2. I think I remember saying at the start of the season that if Arsenal didn't finish in the top 2, it would be an embarrassing season for them, and I'd still stand by that right now.
Especially when you consider they're out of both domestic cups, because if they did finish outside the top 2, but won maybe a Caribou Cup, FA Cup...
Then you can sort of justify it a little bit because you've got silverware, and that's the main aim of football. But if you finish 3rd, 4th, and you haven't got any trophy... I mean, it's not great at all, and especially with the Arsenal's aspirations right now, that's for me, that's an embarrassing season. I think that's a shocking season.
And I think it's also worth a mention that often only 2 teams are generally in the title race come the business end of the season. Yes, at the start of the season, there may be 3 or 4 candidates, but once you start to get to March, April, May, that sort of last 10, 15 games, that's when really 2 teams start to put away.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what we've seen mostly in recent years. So if Arsenal were to slip away from that, I think the season could end up being very catastrophic for Arsenal.
The way these fans, that Arsenal fans, were hyping up these players, you know, you've got the likes of Saka, you've got the likes of Martinelli, you've got the likes of Saliba, best defender in the world. These players were hyped up, and these are players that you hyped up. So we were expecting big things. We're expecting a title challenge. We're expecting to win actual trophies as well. We're expecting silverware. That's what this team needs to go on and do. But Arteta's not delivering, and these are players that you hyped up. So we can't sit here and say he needs a left back, he needs a midfielder, he needs a striker, he needs a backup winger for Saka, because no one has the perfect team. You can ask Pep that, and you can certainly ask Klopp that.
Exactly.
Klopp's literally top of the league with 1 loss, and he has far from the perfect team. That team, he probably wasn't even expecting to be in a title race, to be honest.
Considering Arsenal coming up against a City and a Liverpool that haven't looked the best this season, and their team's supposed to be almost at the peak of its powers and the team that's really on the up, they would be very disappointed if they were to finish.
Well, we're talking about a front 3 that's compared to MSN on certain people on ASTV, and we're talking about Saliba being the best defender in the world. And so these are players that you are hyping up. These are things that you're saying, Arsenal fans. So when you're saying these things, you're expected to have the pressure that's delivered with it. You can't sit here and say, oh, 3rd, 4th, we're never expected to win the title. At the end of the day, you were hyping up these players. And if you were hyping up these players to be world-class, which is what you were saying these are world-class players when I don't think they are, but you were telling me they were. Every single Arsenal fan in the universe was saying these players are world-class. So if these players are truly world-class, if these players are truly the cream of the crop of players, then they should be in the title race without a doubt, and they should be, without a doubt, winning a trophy this season. And if they don't, then that's either the players aren't good enough that you hyped up, or, what I think is the case, Arteta's not delivering the results he needs to, and maybe he's not cut out for the proper top tier of football.
That may sound like a bold statement, but I think it's fair to say, because if you do look at the Arsenal squad this season, yes, I know they've missed players like Timber, but generally speaking, a lot of their key players, Saka, Saliba, Martinelli, Odegaard, Rice, they haven't missed large chunks of football. No. They've played continuously.
Saliba, yeah.
Exactly, like these sort of players who you hold in such high regard, if they're playing continuously without getting injured, and they're coming up against a team like Liverpool and City, like I've reiterated, who have struggled with injuries and consistency, they should be pushing on and striving for the best. Like, look in 1920, as good as Liverpool were, one of the best teams we've ever seen in the league, City had centre-back issues that season. They were playing Fernandinho at centre-back, and they looked very disjointed compared to previous seasons. And what did Liverpool do? They just walked the league, they smashed right through, they said, no, we don't care that City are underperforming, we're going to continue to perform at the top of our game, and Arsenal aren't really doing that. And I know this may seem harsh because that Arsenal team, well, in my opinion, is nowhere near the Liverpool team. No. And then maybe there is the overall standard of the Premier League has gone up over the past few years. But nevertheless, this Arsenal team are performing well below expectations. And I know you could look at tactics and say, I've heard some Arsenal fans say, like AFC Joe, he was talking the other day about how when Ben White and Saka, when they're playing on that right-hand side, sometimes it's very one-dimensional because Ben White never overlaps. It's almost Saka's relying on doing it all on his own. And then on the other side, Martinelli's almost sort of adjusting to life without Xhaka, because although Xhaka was a good player and he did perform well, he was very key in terms of his relationship with Martinelli. And now they've been chopping and changing with Havertz and Trossard in that position and many other players. There's not quite that same chemistry on that left side. So obviously there are a lot of concerns at Arsenal with their disjointed team, let's say, and maybe their loss of key players that went under the radar. But nevertheless, as we always reiterate, it will be a failure of the season if they don't win anything.
Well, before Arsenal fans get angry in the comments as well, so let me get this straight. So you got Aaron Ramsdale, one of the best keepers in the league, proclaimed by you. You got Gabriel and Saliba.
Cost a lot as well.
He did cost a lot as well. Gabriel and Saliba, the best centre-back during the Premier League. And these are things that you're still saying now. Zinchenko, one of the best left-backs in the league. Declan Rice, the best DM in the league. Better than Rodri, a lot of you said. Odegaard compared to De Bruyne last season. Jesus, Saka, Martinelli, one of the best front threes in the league.
Better than Salah, Mane, Firmino, they say.
Well, yeah. But yet you're fourth. So please explain how you have hyping up these players and you're now fourth. That can either only be you hyped up these players to what they're not and you need to accept the fact that you were wrong, or your manager simply ain't good enough. And there's one of those scenarios because it's not 50-50, it is 100% either Arteta's not good enough or you are wrong and you're hyping up these players to not what they're not. And I guess you got a bit carried away.
And also, when you look at Pep and how he almost refreshes his squad every season, he almost implements a new tactic every season, which seems to bamboozle the rest of the league. I think Arteta, the way that Arsenal were performing last season and the way they were playing in terms of tactic style was very good. Yes, maybe not perfect, and maybe they needed to become a bit more resolute, but they were on the right path. I think this season, with the introduction of Havertz, maybe David Raya in goal, I'm not saying he's worse, but in terms of trying to change the style of play, and they almost look maybe sometimes too conservative, and they need to be a bit more forward thinking. Maybe Arteta's almost gone a bit overboard with his change in style. Maybe he should have just stuck with the way they played last season, bring in Rice into the equation. Maybe you sort of, that alleviates some of the mistakes and eradicates some of the errors that they had, but you still have that brilliant attacking display and that brilliant attacking flair that we saw last season.
Well, exactly, yeah. I think Arteta, what he's done is he's heard the comparisons to Pep about how he copies everything he does. He's Pep's co-man, so he thought, what's Pep not done? That's it, bring 2 number 1 keepers in. That's completely backfired, and then we've seen that now. Because Raya and Ramsdale both feeling the pressure and they're both making mistakes, and it's just not doing any good for anyone. At the end of the day, if you're going to bring in Raya, you've got to stick with him as your number 1, and you just got to get rid of Ramsdale. Don't sort of parry about it or
I know he's stuck with Raya, but there's almost that sort of thought in the back of the mind.
Could Ramsdale be number 1, or could he still says he wants to keep Ramsdale in the January window. Like, that makes no sense to me. Like, either you back your number 1, or you go with Ramsdale, and you obviously you shouldn't have signed Raya, because you can't go Raya's my number 1, but Ramsdale, I want him to stay. He might get the number, because all that does is put pressure on both the keepers, and you're seeing that because both of them are making countless mistakes. And Raya, to be fair, is a very good goalkeeper. We've seen that at Brentford, but the way he's performing at Arsenal is completely different to what we saw last season, and that is down to Arteta creating this stupid, unnecessary pressure between the 2 goalkeepers. And also another signing is obviously Kai Havertz. We've seen how that's turned out. We still don't know what his best position is. Arsenal fans are sat there in the summer going, oh, it's fine, Arteta. Arteta's the right man to find the right position for him. We still don't know. Is he a midfielder, striker? What is he?
Do you think that's more Arteta's issue or Havertz himself? Because he struggled with almost his position at Chelsea. No one really knew where.
Well, I think that's Arteta's issue, because he's the one that decided to sign him for 65 million.
Yeah, but do you think that he's almost had an idea of where Havertz is best suited, but he's not, and then he's almost now stuck in the predicament of where do I play him? Or do you think it's just Havertz hasn't really been given the time to excel in one position because Arteta's constantly changing the way Arsenal and him play?
If Havertz was a top player for the last few years, and we still don't really know what his position was, but he was a great player, we knew he
was showing signs of brilliance.
Yeah. I'd go, okay, I get it. You might think you're the man. You know, Arteta's got that ego, even though he's won.
A bit like Mount when he went to United.
Yeah.
Although he wasn't playing the best before he went to United, we still saw that he was a really good player and he could play at this level. But
and Arteta,
his position's not there.
That's the thing. Arteta probably has that ego about him, despite the fact that he's only won 1 FA Cup. He probably has that ego about him, thinking, I think I can get Havertz's best position if he was showing signs of good ability. But we've seen for the past few years, Havertz has not been good enough. He's been shocking
since he left Leverkusen. He's just sort of gone.
Chelsea never found out his best position, but no matter what position he played in, he just wasn't good enough. Like, he'd never shown any signs of ability. I think he scored 1 goal against Newcastle once where he controlled the ball down and scored it with a good touch.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the only signs of ability he's shown at Chelsea. Chelsea fans will say that themselves as well. And yet, you decide to spend, and this is Arteta as well, you decide to spend 65 million on Kai Havertz, despite the fact he's shown nothing in the past few years. That, at the end of the day, is your fault, and you don't know what his best position is, but you can't act shocked and think, because we've seen that. The way he shoots like he
doesn't have a clinical edge, does he?
He doesn't. Not at all. The way he shoots like a 6-year-old. He can't pass. He can't do nothing. The only thing he can do is maybe control it when someone's on the back. But that's it. And that's Arteta's fault, because not only has he signed Kai Havertz, he signed him for 65 million. I know, so many players that money could be spent on are much better than Havertz in a position that Arsenal much need more, because you might as well just catch Saka in that midfield.
Yeah, and they probably would have performed better this season.
Exactly, and spent, because their midfield is much more fluid when Saka was in the team. And then you could have spent that money on a striker or a backup right winger or anything that you're crying about right now that Arteta doesn't have. But no, instead, he decides to spend it on 65 million on Havertz when we know he's not shown any signs of good ability in the past few years, and he still hasn't found his best position. I also think it's down to Mikel Arteta, the fact that Arsenal are a bit more of an emotional side, because the way they play,
that's a good point to be fair.
They play by emotion. Like, they don't. You look at Man City, they're cold-hearted killers. You look at Liverpool, they don't worry. If they go 1-0 down, they're not bothered.
Come back kings.
Exactly, they actually come back a lot from 1-0 down. City, the same. They're not They're not sort of stressed. They're not panicking.
Experience.
And we saw that in the FA Cup. In fact, we saw that in the FA Cup. Arsenal, for the first half hour of that, in that first half, they really did have
our goal.
And they had Liverpool pinned back, but they couldn't find a goal, and that's when they started to get emotional and they started to get really frustrated. But Liverpool, despite being on the back foot, they're always in the game. They always sort of had their cool heads. They never thought, oh, we're penned back here. We just needed... Like, they never ever thought emotionally.
Exactly.
And down to Klopp's very, very smart tactics and down to Klopp's sort of know-how of how to win a game, obviously.
He's been in the job 20 years. He's been in managerial... Well, I think he joined Mainz because he obviously was a player at Mainz when he went to play a manager. That was like 20, 25 years ago.
Exactly.
He's seen it all, hasn't he?
Klopp has seen it all. Exactly. He's been through it. He's a lot older. He's a lot more experienced. Arteta's just... He's not been in those scenarios, so he doesn't really know... I feel like Arteta finds it hard to sort of...
He's learning on the job at the higher stage.
Exactly. And I think Klopp has shown with his tactics and Liverpool in general as well, with their experience, they don't panic despite them being on the back foot. Even though Arsenal were peppering their goal when I was watching that game, I still thought
I thought we were going to concede.
I still thought Liverpool though. I still thought that they were sort of in the game. I still thought that they were.
Well, that's testament to Klopp because we're very rarely ever out of the game completely, aren't we?
Exactly, and that's the thing. And that's the thing. Liverpool aren't emotional. They don't start getting like really frustrated that they're getting their goals getting peppered.
Stay composed.
Whereas Arsenal, for example, they're not getting that goal in the first half hour and they start getting frustrated, and then that's when Liverpool obviously go and find the 2 goals because Arsenal are just... And we've seen it, in fact, with substitutions that Arteta's made where he's maybe made the wrong substitution, and that's the thing. Arsenal sort of go more emotional, they play more emotionally, which can help you sometimes, obviously due to passion and that, but on the most part of winning a title mainly, it's, you can't play off emotion because when you look at the way City won titles, the way United won titles back in the day, and the way Liverpool have won titles and win trophies in general, they never ever play emotionally. They never go through emotions.
Yes, you have the passion and the exuberance from the players, but in terms of those big moments, you don't panic because just it's almost an expectation that you're going to win, and you think to yourself, I'm going to get the job done. It's my job here. Exactly. I'm not going to just be like, ooh, like an erratic little kid in the playground.
And that's what I think Arsenal, and I think it's also down to Arteta. When the way Arteta's like running, getting in the ref's face, getting in the full official's face, up and down. I just don't think that does the players any good, because if you see your manager running up and down like a headless chicken, it's not going to give you any confidence, because you're seeing your manager running around, stressing around, and you're thinking, well, does the manager have that belief in me? Whereas you look at Klopp, I know he does have his moments, but that's when Liverpool more score. But when you look at Klopp, and especially Pep, they're very cool, they're very composed, and they have that, the Arsenal fans like this aura.
And before we wrap up the video, we're not trying to discredit Arteta, because he is a good manager. He's shown signs of being a top manager, but he's learning on the job, and it could be 4 or 5 years before we really see Arteta flourish. Yeah. Like, not all managers just hit the ground running straight away. Sometimes they take years to develop their craft. Yeah. But it's also worth a mention, which links to Harvey's point about the team being naive and inexperienced, is that Saka is probably Arsenal's talisman. He's their talismanic figure, and Arteta's the manager. When you look at those two, they're both very naive and experienced players. They haven't won barely anything. They haven't played in many big moments over their years. Over their careers. Whereas if you look at Klopp and you look at Salah and you look at De Bruyne and you look at Haaland,
they've all been there and done it.
They've done it. They've won it all year in, year out, especially Pep and especially De Bruyne in recent years in terms of what they've just won. And then you look at Klopp and Salah, the experience, the consistency of the pair. And then I think when Arsenal look to almost a player to win them a game like Saka, and they look to Arteta on the touchline, it doesn't instill you with the same confidence and belief as Klopp and Salah, De Bruyne and Guardiola. And not to say that these two couldn't reach that level, but at the moment, they're just not there.
But you shouldn't put them on a pedestal like they are at that pedal already, because the way I saw Arsenal fans chatting like Saka's on Salah's level and Arteta's on Klopp's level, I've genuinely seen that. You can't be putting that pressure on the players. Exactly. You put them standards on the players. You're putting them on this pedestal, comparing them to the likes of Salah, calling them world class. And at the end of the day, they're just not. They're simply not. And I think that you either need to understand that you're wrong, or you need to start looking at the manager, because maybe he's not getting the best out of them at this current moment in time.
Anyway, guys, comment down below your thoughts on mine and Harvey's opinions. If you're an Arsenal fan, comment down below your thoughts on your current team. Where do you think you need to address in the current window, the January window? Where do you think you need to address in the summer? Is it just the striker position that you have problems with and issues? Or are there other parts of your team which you really need to improve upon to maybe elevate you to that next level? And if you're a non-Arsenal fan, a Liverpool fan, United, a City fan, a Chelsea fan, comment down below your thoughts on Arsenal. Where do you think they stand at the moment? And do you think Arteta and Saka and all these players can really live up to those expectations that Arsenal fans like to put upon them? Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.